Well, good afternoon and welcome to this webinar brought to you by NQA. My name is Richard Walsh and I'm NQA's Principal Assessor covering environment and energy. Just a little bit about NQA just to start us off. I noticed there's a few people on the attendee list that I recognise. Hello and welcome if you met me before. If you haven't, nice to meet you. So NQA, a worldwide global accreditation body, certification body, represented in a number of locations across the world, as you can see on the slide there. And we have obviously a large client list working both locally and nationally, and indeed internationally, with a number of well-known companies, including many household names. So what are we going to be looking at over the next hour or so? I'll apologise now if I overrun. I have a habit of doing so. My hour-long webinars quite often end up going 5 or 10 minutes over. That's because I've got so much to try and cram in, but we'll try and keep to time if we can. I'm hoping to speak for about 45 minutes, 50 minutes maybe, and then there'll be a section at the end for any questions. You will see on the right-hand side of your screen, if that's where it's placed itself, a box that allows you to ask questions. Feel free to type any questions in there as we go along. I can see them as you type them, and if I think it's pertinent to deal with them at the time, we will do. If not, we'll come back to the questions at the end and I'll try and get through as many as I can. I've already had a couple of people asking about the presentation and will it be made available? Yes, it will. Anybody who's registered, even those who've registered and not joined, will actually be sent a PDF copy of the slides, so there's no need to frantically try and scribble down everything that you see on screen. And also this webinar is being recorded along with the previous one we ran a couple of months ago now, and that will sit on our YouTube channel. So for those of you that know how to use YouTube, if you search through channels, look for NQA, you'll see copies of this and indeed all the other webinars that we've ever delivered. So that's basically what we're going to be looking through over the next hour or so. So we're going to have a look at the key concepts of 50001, the standard, what it's all about, look at some of the new terminology and importantly some definitions that are introduced within the standard. We're going to go through the clauses themselves, clause by clause. That's obviously the most important part of the process and presumably why you've joined us today. Have a look at the transition timelines and a couple of notable dates, and then a little bit at the end on some tips on how to prepare for the changes and implications. There's a number of overarching concepts within the standard, in fact within all of the newly structured management system standards. The first one to me is the most important, and we're going to have a look at this clause a little bit later on, or this requirement a little bit later on. It's continual improvement in energy performance. I'm not going to go too deeply into that just at the moment, but that is the ultimate intended outcome of the standard. It's why the standard's there, and it's what the standard expects you as an organisation to achieve. Continual improvement in your energy performance. There's a requirement to fulfil compliance obligations or legal requirements, call them what you will, and also the achievement of energy objectives. The standard also is all about managing change within any organisation, and the planning process focuses on change. It focuses on how to manage energy risk and also looks at how this standard can be integrated with other standards and processes within your organisation. For those of you with an interest in standards, that's where the standard itself has come from, going right the way back to 2001 with the original sort of toe in the water energy management standards. The first main standard that kicked all of this off was in 2009, a British standard, 16001, which was the world's first British and European standard. and that was quickly superseded in 2011 by a standard that probably some of you have at the moment, which is ISO 50001-2011. This slide shows you a development timeline as to where things are. Obviously, we're currently now rapidly rushing towards the end of 2018, soon be 2019. And of course, this standard, the 2018 version of 50001, was released, was published on the 21st of August. So we're now into a transition period, a 3-year transition period, which is just the same as it was for ISOs 9001 and 14001, and is similar for the migration for ISO 45001, the new health and safety standard. We are embarking upon, and this is a part of that, the NQA training program, where training materials are available and we're delivering support and guidance to our clients and indeed to anybody else who's interested. And you'll see at the end, the 3-year transition period expires on the 20th of August 2021, and as with 9 and 14,001, if you haven't transitioned by that point on the 21st of August, your existing certificates will expire. So no need to rush yet, but with two and 3/4 years till we get to that. But 20th of August 2021 is a key date. As with all of the management system standards, quality, environment, health and safety, information technology, all of these standards occasionally have to be updated, and there is a reason for that, and that's to maintain their relevance. This standard is only 7 years old, or the original standard was 7 years old. ISO 14001, which transitioned a few years ago now, that had been around since 2004, and in its previous incarnation 1996. And the way we think about energy, the way we think about the environment has changed in the previous years, and therefore we need to make sure that the standards themselves reflect how technologies and how ways of thinking in all of these areas change. So it's to maintain a relevance. It's likely that this standard is going to be around for the next 7 to 10 years, something like that. 14,001 managed to go from 2004 to 2015, and I suspect that this standard will be around for at least the next 7 or 8 years, possibly 10 years. As I said, it's to reflect the increasingly complex environments in which we find ourselves. And indeed, one of the things that's been borne in mind as these standards change is to try and reflect the needs of all users. And there has been in the past some criticism that some of these standards made sense if you were a manufacturing organisation, but appeared less relevant if you were in the service sector. There's a new new set of requirements on corporate governance, on leadership, and there's also been a push from industry to try and make it easier to integrate all of these standards, and so therefore they fit this what's known as Annex SL. Annex SL was a blank document, if you like, an empty standard that was published a few years ago now by ISO, and forms the basis for all of the new standards and provides the framework on which they're all built. However, as we'll see slightly in a short while, some of the clauses in this new standard have drifted away slightly from terms and clauses used in, say, 14,001 2015, which isn't really helpful if you've already got 14,001 in place. We will look at that as we go through. However, I can assure you now, before we get too far into this at all, that if you are using the structure and the terminology that 14,001 uses and not quite sticking to the terminology used in the new 50,001 standard, that will not be a problem. There is no need to run two separate standards to use two sets of terminology. The 14,001 terminology will be acceptable. If you've already been through 9 and 14,001 transitions, you'll recognise this. This is the Annex SL set out. 10 clauses, however, only clauses 4 to 10 are actually auditable. Clauses 1, 2, and 3 basically just set the scene. So clauses 4 to 10 are the clauses that place requirements upon yourselves as an organisation, and also are the clauses that we would assess when we come in to carry out an assessment. As with all of the standards, it follows the Deming cycle, for those of you with an interest in quality terminology, or Plan, Do, Check, Act is perhaps more commonly referred to now, and that shows the Plan, Do, Check, Act scenario set out with the relevant boxes, relevant sections filled in for energy management. I tend to prefer things set out linear. It's just me, and this is a slide that a number of people have found particularly useful, both this slide and its equivalent in the 14,001 webinars I've developed. And this shows all of the clauses of the standard, clauses 1, 2, and 3 above the line, showing the fact that they're not auditable, and then clauses 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 with all of the relevant subsections shown beneath them. And it's those sections that we're going to be looking at in this presentation. Just a reminder, it's very, very easily to integrate all of the standards that you see on that screen now. All of those follow the Annex SL format. So the same clause in 45,001 will read more or less the same as the 50,001, 14,001 or 9,001 clause. Obviously slight differences being the subject matter, but the structure of all of those standards is the same, and they will very, very nicely dovetail into a fully integrated business management system. So how does this fit in with 14,001? I know when I first looked at energy management systems sort of 9, 10 years ago now, initially I used to wonder how the two would fit together, because I thought that if you already had 14,001, that would tick all the boxes. Why do you need a standard just to look at energy management? Why not another standard just to look at waste or resource management or whatever? Some of those standards do exist, but are not fully auditable like this standard is. So 50,001 focuses purely on energy performance improvement, while obviously 14,001 addresses all of the significant environmental aspects of an organisation. Both standards, as we can see there, can be implemented individually, or they can be integrated with each other and, of course, with the other similar named standards. However, if energy is an organisation's most significant impact, if it's the thing that comes out the high scoring in a 14,001 system, then it might well be that 50,001 is also appropriate. What it does, at the end of the day, it takes energy management to a much higher level than that required by 14,001. However, the two standards do complement each other and sit very nicely together side by side. One of the early clauses, one of the non-auditable clauses of the standard is terms and definitions, and obviously there are many, many in there. I just pulled a couple out to point out. The term correction is defined as action to eliminate a detected non-conformity. And corrective action is action to eliminate the cause of a detected non-conformity. As with 14,001, this standard has dropped the term preventive action. Preventive action is now seen as being encompassed in clauses 6 and 8. However, I have a number of clients on both standards that are retaining the term preventive action, and that's not a problem. You can call things whatever you like as far as we're concerned as an assessment body, so long as the outcome of that clause meets the requirements of the standard. And then the most important one, as far as I'm concerned, the one we're going to look at, energy performance. Energy performance defined as measurable results related to energy efficiency, use, and consumption. So I said the most important part of this presentation was to go through all of the clauses, and here we go. The next sort of 20, 30 slides take us through clauses 4 right the way through to clause 10. Some in more detail than others, some haven't changed with the new standard, some have. So we'll go through them clause by clause. If you've already got ISO 14001 or ISO 9001 to the new standards, the 2015 standards in place, then this clause will more or less be already there. Will probably just need to be tweaked a little bit to include specific energy considerations. Clause 4.1, context of the organisation, is all about determining the external and internal issues relevant to whatever your organisation does that affect its ability to achieve the intended outcome of the management system. Now, put very, very simply, the requirement of the standard is to improve your energy performance, to achieve continual improvement in energy performance. The best way of thinking about this clause is to think about there are things that are going to help you achieve that, and there are things that are going to get in the way. You need to know what they are, you need to identify them, and really it's all about making sure that you maximize the things that are going to help you, and you either remove or mitigate the impact of the things that are going to get in the way. So it's all about identifying an organization's context, where you are, who you are, what you do, what's important to you, who's important to you, how are those areas going to help you, and how are they going to hinder you. And it's all about setting the foundations for the management system, making sure that your environmental, so your energy management system, I do apologise if I occasionally say environment, I do deliver both standards, so occasionally I might lapse into saying environment, apologies. Make sure that your energy management system focuses on the issues that present the greatest risk in not achieving continual improvement. One of the questions that I quite often get asked is what sort of things should we be looking at? And there's a number of things there. The standard doesn't tell you how to do it. The standard tells you what you have to achieve. A lot of people tend to split them into these three areas. I found this tends to work the best. We have energy related issues, we have external issues, and we have internal issues within your own organisation. Those are the sort of things that you need to be considering. But remember, ultimately, the intent in this clause is to provide a high-level understanding, so a high level within the business of the important issues, as I've said, that can positively or negatively affect how you manage energy within the business. Doesn't have to be written down. We'll look at the amount of documentation that's needed later, but there has to be this understanding within the business of these issues. Interested parties follows on from that, and I've already alluded to a little bit about interested parties. Having identified what's important, we need to also think about who is important, who needs to understand what we're doing, who needs to understand the way we manage energy, what is that understanding the need, and how do we deliver that. So it's about determining the relevant requirements of those interested parties, looking at what we're going to meet and what we're not going to meet, because we do have some choice in whether we meet the needs of interested parties. Now, this clause is one of the key areas where there is a difference between ISO 14001 2015 and ISO 50001 2018, and the one that causes me the greatest annoyance, if you like, and if I'm being blatantly honest, can't understand why they've chosen to do this. ISO 14001 has a clause called compliance obligations, which talks about the legislative areas and other areas, but basically the legislative areas that you have to meet. This standard doesn't have that clause. Don't know why. They could have quite